Good morning. Live and online, welcome if you're watching online this morning with us right now as well. It's been a while, hasn't it? I think it's 7 or 8 weeks. I can't remember how long, but it's so good to be back in church. But I can't wait until a few weeks' time when hopefully they change the square metre rule again and we can have as many that want to come back. That's what we're waiting for. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to start this morning with a couple of quick videos. So actually, we're going to turn the lights down for a moment. If you just have a look at these very amateurish videos that I put together. Okay, now I'm down the other side of my house. This is one of my pride and joys. This is my Tahitian lime tree. I love it. Lots of really good fruit, and it likes to produce fruit most of the year. Looks really, really healthy. That is, until I show you something in a little bit of detail. Now, can you see near where my finger is up here on the leaf? Can you see, whoa, it's getting really windy here, but there is a little white dot right there on that leaf. You can probably see it right there. And that little dot has been left by a butterfly. And that butterfly drops these little white dots on the ends of the new leaves. And in a couple of weeks' time, a little caterpillar will hatch. It's called a citrus leaf miner, and what it will do is it will mine the leaf, and it loves to leave this lovely little pattern on the leaf like that. Now, if I don't do anything more with it, what's going to eventually happen is it's going to just keep going all over all my leaves, and as you can see, what it does is it just eventually destroys the plant. The problem for me is I have a little orange tree a couple of trees down that's got about 50 of those dots on it right now. Okay, so down the side of my house, here's a carport. I don't know how long it's been there, maybe 30 years or so that we have. But let me show you a little bit of detail here. So this carport is supported by 1, 2, not only 3 posts, but over here, post number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. But when we go and have a look at the detail, you'll see, for example, that post number 7 is actually doing jack all. If we go to post number 5, we can see that it's well on the way to also doing jack all. So soon I'll have only 5 posts supporting this structure, which I use. It's got a nice little attic, and I use it to put in lots and lots of wood building supplies, etc. All right, I've got one more thing to show you. I've got a little picture here, I think, to show. So in early December, turned out that I had a little BCC, basal cell carcinoma, that needed to be removed from the side of my nose. From the outside, it looked like just a little pimple. But apparently underneath, there was something a little bit more sinister lurking, and it's just a little tumour. And they cut it out, and actually it's not looking too bad now. You have to look up pretty close to see what's gone on. But these 3 stories, you can probably take that photo off now because people don't want to look at that for too long. I've shown you a really nice looking photo. It could have been a lot worse what I could have shown. But all 3 of these were ticking time bombs. You know, first of all, you've got the little lime tree. Now, the little lime tree, which had those little white dots on it, left by the citrus leaf miner. So many times I walk past those trees and I see the little white dots, and I know what it means. I know that it means in about a week's time, it's going to start to destroy my tree. And so many times I think, oh, I'm just going to deal with that tomorrow. I'll pick them all off, or I'll go and spray it with citrus oil or eco oil, and I'll deal with that tomorrow. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. in the situation of the carport, I understand the situation is if I don't deal with those posts eventually, there's going to be a big problem. You can't keep putting weight in the ceiling of that thing and keep losing posts and not have an outcome. And I think it's the same with my nose. Whilst it wasn't a big deal at the time, the doctor made it very clear to me, if you don't deal with it, it will become a big deal. You need to deal with this. It's got to go. And this morning, they're just examples of what I think is a ticking time bomb. And there's heaps of them, and I'm sure you can think of things in your own life or examples that you've seen where things that are not dealt with will become a much bigger problem if they're left. But this morning, we're going to focus on one in particular. And it starts because of a falling out with another person. Now, it often involves friends. There's been an issue, basically, between at least a couple of people, and now there's a really awkward or strained relationship happening to the point that they're feeling uncomfortable being around each other. And this issue has changed the relationship to the point that now at least one of them is angry with the other. Maybe they're avoiding the other, they're being rude or short to the other person, or even they're just starting to resent them. And you might be actually in a situation like this now. And let's face it, I actually think most of us will be put in a situation like this at some point in our life because people are difficult. People are difficult all the time. I mean, I was just thinking of a very basic example the other day, kids' birthday parties. Now, surely, kids' birthday parties would be nothing more than a lovely time of celebration and love, wouldn't they? You'd think so. No. Have you ever seen kids play pass the parcel? There is no love shown when kids play pass the parcel. They are selfish. They are in it for themselves to win. Have you seen adults play musical chairs? They will push that 75-year-old grandmother out of the way to get that last chair. Pin the tail on the donkey. There's always some kid that's determined to cheat, isn't there? There's always that kid that just nails it perfectly, and you can tell everyone's thinking, oh, yeah, but they could see they didn't put the thing on right. Then you've got the kid, the little kid that decides that they're going to open the presents of the birthday kid. And then you've got two scenarios that play out. One is that the parent thinks, oh, that's so cute that my little 2-year-old is doing all that and everyone else is giving them daggers. Or you get the situation where the parent is a bit more understanding and tries to drag the 2-year-old away, and so the 2-year-old is kicking and screaming, either way not making it a pleasant birthday experience. Then you've got the ungrateful kid that opens the present that they've already got one of and basically lets the person that gave it to them know, I've already got that. Even as an adult, I've had some interesting incidences take place at some of my birthdays. At my 30th, there was a guy that said, you know what, let me do all the music for you. But this is back in the days when we had to put it on a USB stick to bring it in. He did a playlist. He rocked up to the party 2 hours late. He rocked up to the party drunk, and he vomited in my pool. Another year, I had another birthday party, not a big one. I think I was about 26, maybe 27. And Sally and I decided we'll just put on everything for everyone. Just rock up. We don't want you to bring a thing. And that was fine. It was back that age. We were mainly all young adults. And anyway, there was one particular young adult that still lived with his mum. And at the end of the night, as everyone left, he just came up to me and said, yeah, see, I can see that those packets of chips over there haven't been eaten. It's okay if I take them home, isn't it? Now, this is one of those situations where I'm in a really tough bind because, of course, I'm thinking, how dare you? But I did one of those, no, that's okay. But at the same time, I gave him the look of, it's not okay, if you've seen that before. He took them home. I hope he enjoyed them. The point is that that's just a simple little scenario involving birthdays, which is meant to be a celebration. It just shows how we can all be difficult. None of us are perfect. And so at times, all of us are going to do things that are going to create issues in relationships. When an issue arises, if we ignore it, strangely enough, it won't go away. It was like the thing that was inside my nose. It's only going to get bigger. If you ignore a strained relationship, you are effectively sitting on a ticking time bomb. So what do? Now, Jesus knew that this would be a significant challenge for all of us, and so he addresses it. And that's what I want to look at today. And he addresses it really well, very clearly in Matthew 18. And so I want to get something clear before we start on this, though, that this passage is not for every situation. It is not for situations where a person has been physically assaulted or sexually assaulted. It is not for a workplace dispute. This is not what this is about. They are dealt with by relevant boards or authorities or whatever needs to happen. No, this is for common problems with people in churches where two people, maybe three or more, have had a falling out and they haven't truly repaired the relationship. And when two people have this sort of a falling out, it's horrible. It's horrible to try and deal with it. There's nothing worse for a church than having a number of different people, non-reconciled, having to try and meet together. It leads to other people sometimes taking sides, and it just definitely destroys unity in the church. But Jesus has given us this process to deal with the conflict. Let's read what Jesus' process is in Matthew 18. Jesus said, "If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offence. If the other person listens and confesses it, you've won the person back. But if you're unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. If the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. If he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector." Now, I'm not going to go into the bit today. Actually, I'm going to just leave that other bit I was thinking for a minute. I think we'll start with, are you in conflict with anyone? Are you in conflict with anyone? If you're unsure, is there a person that when you go out, and what I mean by go out, I mean particularly to church, that you hope won't be there? Or are you ever awkward around particular people at church? Or do certain people make you feel uncomfortable? Or do you make them feel uncomfortable? Or do you deliberately ignore certain people at church? And if you can say yes to any of these, you probably have an issue with them. And if you have an issue with someone, the next question you've got to ask is, are they a Christian? And this is important because the process that we're looking at today is for dealing with issues between Christians. You know, Jesus makes it clear here. Let's look at the first part of the verse. It says, if another believer sins against you. We're not talking about where anyone does the wrong thing by you. We're talking about where one Christian does something wrong against another Christian. So it's designed to help sort out issues between people in church. The way that Jesus says this, it's as though he's expecting people to have issues. It's not like, look, on the off chance, this is probably unlikely to happen. No, it comes across to me as though Jesus was expecting this to happen, that we're going to have issues with each other. And if it's expected, why don't we just ignore it? Because we know it's going to happen. You know, why does it need to be sorted? Why don't we just let it go and just see what happens? Well, if I don't sort out the little dots on my citrus tree, the little dots become basically tree killers. And if I don't sort out the posts on my pergola, it's going to be a people killer. And if I don't sort out the little tumour on my nose, it's going to become a big tumour, and then it's going to be a real issue. And if I don't sort out the issues I have with other people, it will create a much bigger issue. And Jesus was saying, let's deal with the issue before it's a big issue. 1 John 4 says, if someone says, I love God, but hates a Christian brother or sister, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people we can see, how can we love God whom we can't see? So the question's not, can you cope with that other person at church, or are you able to get by? The question is, are you able to love them? Remember that Jesus' greatest commandment for Christians was love the Lord your God and love others. We must do both. We can't separate them. If we don't love all of God's people, we don't really love God. And so, as I said before, this is not advice for how to deal with your non-Christian friends or your non-Christian family. This is not advice for that. This is a process for dealing with issues between two Christians. As we deal with each other, we need to recognise that in this situation, you're not dealing with enemies. Effectively, you're dealing with family. Jesus says, if someone says, I love God, but hates a Christian brother or sister, we are brothers, we are sisters. We are effectively all here, brothers and sisters, because we share the same Heavenly Father. Your family. So, the only criteria for working out is Matthew 18. What we're going to go through is this for me. It's really simple. It's, are you a Christian and are they a Christian? And if the answer is yes to both, this is appropriate. If they're not a Christian, then Matthew 18 does not apply. You love them, you pray for them, you forgive them. You do all that you can to reconcile them if they're not a Christian. You do all of those things, but here's the bit you may not like. You love, you pray, you forgive, and you expect nothing in return. And that is the hard bit for the Christian. Because they feel like, well, don't they have to forgive me? No, they don't. They don't have to do anything by you. They are not bound by the Bible. What right do we have of telling people outside the church that they must follow the process of Matthew 18 because Jesus said you have to? They don't even think Jesus is real. What? You can't do that with non-Christians. So I'm making this really clear. Don't try what we're going to go through today with anyone that is not a believer in Jesus Christ. It is not for that. The best thing you can do for them is love them, pray for them, forgive them. Best thing you can do. I think we've got that clear now, right? But when the issue involves two people that say, we are both Christians and we are part of a church, we are brother and sister in Christ, when it comes to that, Jesus has this 6-step process, which I want to quite briefly go through with you today. So first of all, he says, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offence. The first thing we need to work out is, did someone sin? And this is really important. When my daughter was 4, a former pastor here, Anthony Tucker, some of you know him, good friend of mine, he convinced my daughter to support Port Power. Now, some of you would remember this. It was painful. It was very painful for me. I had these nightmares at night thinking that my only daughter, my pride and joy, could grow up supporting such a despicable team. I had these, I'd often think, even when we're older, and I thought I could take her to the football, we could have a father and daughter day, but that would be misery, going to a showdown with someone like that. It was awful. But you know what? At the same time, Tuck hadn't sinned. He thought it was hilarious. And, I thought it was wrong though, and I didn't think it was his place to do it. But you know what? Given the chance, I would have converted his kids to the Crows if I got a chance. And I realised that. But the problem was, because I realised that even though it shouldn't, it was starting to bug me, I realised, you know what? I'm actually starting to have a tiny little issue with this. And so for relationship's sake with Tuck, and our relationship remained good, by the way. We're still good now. There's no issue between us. But in relation to that, I just had to let it go. I had to grow up and go, who cares if she goes for Port? I mean, she'll just be on a losing side. That's okay. It doesn't matter. They can continue to get near the final and then not make it. In situations, the point is this. Port is a fine team. It's a fine team. If you're a criminal, you should support them. Now, in situations where you feel, I'm talking about offence today, and you can see I'm just trying to work some people up here, but in situations where you feel it's not a big deal, you know what I've learned? It's best just to let it go. Just let it go. Proverbs 19:11 says, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. People will do things that annoy me. I'll do things that annoy you. And where possible, it's great if we can just get over it. It's really the best thing to do. You know, if one of my staff is having a bad day because their kids are not sleeping at home, not looking at you, Nick, or they're stressed about something, or they're being grumpy, or they're being short with me, I'm not talking about Sally, I overlook it and I just let it go. But if a person does it all the time, you know, that's a different story. Then we need to sit down and talk about it and go, what's going on here? But this is the key. Did someone sin? Did someone do something that can't be overlooked? You know, I'm not talking about crimes. You know, if you do a crime, we all know this, the authorities will deal with you, not us. Our passage is looking at non-criminal sin where maybe a Christian has just been telling lies about you, or maybe they're telling others bad things about you, or maybe they've said or done things that have really embarrassed you or hurt you. It's not a crime, it's not a police matter, but they've sinned against you. If another believer sins against you and you really feel aggrieved by it and you think, you know what, I can't just let it go, I need to do something like this, then Jesus says, okay, so if you need to sort this out, go privately and point out the offence. So the second thing that Jesus says to do, go and see them alone. As long as it's safe, go and see them alone. Why alone? Well, if you talk to them about it, you're dealing with it. And if you're talking to others about it, it's gossip. Most issues can actually be resolved if you go to them. Most issues. It's very rare to find one that can't be sorted out if you go to the person. That is your best chance of it being sorted. The more people that know, I find, the harder it is for that issue to be resolved. It actually gets worse and worse the more people that have been brought into it. You know, Proverbs 26:20 says, fire goes out without wood and quarrels disappear when gossip stops. Just go to them. Don't, where possible, do not tell other people. I don't know of any situation that's ever been resolved where people went and spoke to everyone else about it and just didn't tell the person they had the issue with. That doesn't solve anything. I do find that gets people more worked up, but that's about it. You know, we'll go to people and you'll see that they're not doing well. Maybe they're having a bad day and you might say, look, I can see that you're upset. You might ask, you know, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And they might say, oh, you know, this person hurt me and they've done this and they've done that. And you just listen to that if you can cope with it. And then when the time's right, there's a really important question you need to ask them. And it's really simple, and that's, have you talked to them about it? Have you actually been and told them? Do they know? Oh, no, I haven't done that because I know they wouldn't listen. Or, you know, I don't want to talk to them about it. It's too embarrassing. Or, you know, they do this all the time to other people. So, and I know what will happen. They'll probably just get mad at me and it'll just make things worse. So basically, you haven't raised it with them. No, I haven't. Then I reckon you've got two choices. Number one, you get over it. You overlook it and you forgive them and you move on. Or you have to go and talk to them about it. They're really your best two options. You have to go to them. A strained relationship, the Bible says, it's like a fire. You know, talking to others about it, it just adds wood to the fire. But the moment you go and talk to them about it, it's like you're pouring water on the fire. It actually puts it out. It's amazing how often when people just go to the other person, it just sorts everything out. And so the third point is just sort it out. Try and sort it out, just the two of you. Jesus said, if the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. If you've been wronged, you talk to them. You see if you can work it out between the two of you. And if you can, great, it's over. Have a hug, have a handshake, have a virtual hug, whatever you got to do. Say some nice things about each other and go back to being friends. And I've found in the past that when people go and do that, sometimes they end up better friends than what they were before the fight. Because now they know they can be honest with each other and that the other person can forgive them, and it's actually relationship building. So the aim is to be friends again, to restore the relationship. It's called reconciliation. You know, our aim must never be for the other person to see how bad they are, or for them to truly see how, or to punish them for how bad they've been to us. Jesus was punished for your sin, and Jesus was punished for their sin. There is no need for us to punish them for their sin as well. It's already been done. It defeats the purpose of what Jesus did. Jesus says, go and sort it out. It might be awkward. It will be awkward. It might be uncomfortable. But who cares? Just sort it out. Somewhere safe, somewhere neutral, somewhere private, we try to sort it out. And if you can't sort it out, again, go back and ask yourself, is it that big of a deal? Do I want to continue to pursue this? Is it worth my energy pursuing this? Is this where I do what the proverb says and I just overlook the wrong? And I just let it go? Do I need this to go further? And you know what? I would say sometimes it does need to go further, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just let it go if you can. If you can't let it go, then of course it does need to go further. So what do we do? If you can't sort it out, you go and see them again, this time with one or two people. In verse 16 it says, but if you're unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. So you meet someone and you say, look, I've got this issue. You did this and I felt like this. And they say, well, I disagree. That's not what happened at all. It's not like that. Or they might say, I don't care. Or they might say, oh, I don't see it that way. Or they might say, I'm not apologising. I'm not sorry at all. This is how I am. You better get over it. And Jesus says, if that's their attitude, then go back to them, but this time, take someone else with you. Not to gang up on them. And they're there just to witness you, in a godly way, try to sort this thing out. Try to restore the relationship. They are proof that you have tried to reconcile with that other person. And it's really important who you take. You do not take your friends. That's called gang up. We don't take people that would agree with us. That's called gang up. You take someone neutral that both parties are willing to meet with, because they'll know whether they think it's a neutral situation or not. You take someone that is going to just be honest with both of you and just give an honest account of what they witnessed. They're not there to sort it out. They're just there to witness. And what if that doesn't work? What if they do that and still they're the same sort of answers where the two sides cannot agree with each other? If the issue is such a big deal and you've tried to talk to them, you've tried and nothing has changed, and you've still tried to talk with them with others present, and again, nothing's changed, no progress, Jesus says, if the person refuses to listen, take your case to the church. In other words, take it to church leadership. Jesus is saying, bring in some godly spiritual authority. In Hebrews 12:11 it says, no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. You know, when I was a kid, I can't remember a single time when my parents disciplined me and I said, thanks for that. Can you? Can you remember a time that happened in your life when you were a kid, that you were happy that you got some consequences for some naughtiness? Does Evie do that, Nick? All the time? So grateful. Wonder child. Miracle. No, normally it was quite the opposite. But I know now that what they were doing was for my benefit, because what parents try to do, they do because they love us and because they want us to become people of good character. They want us to become people that learn to treat other people well and to be in reconciliation with other people. And so sometimes they've got to do some things to teach us that. And I think it should be the same reason that people go to church leadership, to sort out issues with others that they have. And that's because they love us and they want us to become people of good character. Now, it's possible that even if we bring the church leadership into the situation, that a person will still say, well, I don't want restoration. I don't want to know that person. I don't want to forgive that person. And if this is the case, you don't have much of an option other than to, what Jesus says, treat them differently. Now, this might seem harsh, but I'm just telling you what Jesus says to do. He says, then if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. It sounds probably a lot worse than what Jesus is actually saying. He's not saying treat them like a leper, right? He's not saying isolate them and treat them like don't anyone go near them. Like, I'm not going to get into the corrupt tax collector today, but apart from just to say this, that's more of a church leadership side of it. But a corrupt tax collector was someone who was taking money, a Jew that would take money from the Jews to give it to the Roman government, and the Roman government would say, well, you've got to give us this much, so whatever you can get out of the people, you can keep what's left over. So they would charge them higher taxes to make sure that they made a living out of it because they knew how much they had to give to the Roman government. So you might call that a traitor to the Jews, right? So it's a bit like being a Judas. You're a traitor. Now, if a person is behaving like a traitor, you would probably say not a wise person to put in church leadership. Is that fair enough? So when they say treat them like a tax collector, what they're really saying is don't put them in positions where they are responsible for other people. You need to treat them like you would a person that is a traitor. Don't really want to go into that. That's more for a church leadership point of view. But the bit that is of interest to you is the bit where it says treat them like a pagan. Now, a pagan is just a person that doesn't obviously believe in Jesus is enough from our point of view. And in other words, deal with them as you would a non-Christian. That's what you should do with them. That means love them, pray for them, and forgive them. So it's not that bad after all, is it? That's what you got to do. If they're not prepared, you're going to have to just move on. For your sake, you're going to have to forgive them. The hope is that in doing so, over time, as you do nothing but show love and care and forgiveness to them, the hope is that in time they will realise the error of their ways and that God can do something in their life. Because you're not going to be able to. You've tried all that you can do. If you keep trying, it becomes harassment. It can end up just being really, really awkward. So once you've done what Jesus has said to do, you hand it over to God and you say, Lord, I forgive them. I know you forgave me. I'm going to forgive them. It's in your hands. You do what you need to do, Jesus. And you hope that they'll ask God for forgiveness as well in time. And that they'll eventually want to restore that broken relationship. And I've seen it happen where years later sometimes that does happen, and it's a great day when it does. It's awesome to see that. Jesus is a loving and forgiving God. He doesn't want to condemn anyone for the wrongs that they've done. He doesn't want to see anyone condemned. He's forgiven us for all that we did wrong, and I think that Jesus just expects us to do the same. As I've forgiven you, you guys need to forgive everyone else. In the book of Philippians 4, two women in the church, they're not getting along. I'm not going to go into the detail, but basically they had an issue with each other, and the whole church knew about it. You can read it in Philippians 4. The whole church got involved, and so the Apostle Paul decides, I've had enough of this. He's pretty clear. He just says, because you belong to the Lord, settle your disagreement. Sort it out. And he would say the same to us. Sort it out. Don't ignore it. Just get the thing sorted. Now, some of you may have been thinking of a person as we've gone through this message. Another Christian that maybe you've had a falling out with. And if this is you, my message for you today is just try and sort it out. Now, it's probably really important here that I mention this. I'm not doing this sermon because there's been two people in church that have had a big falling out recently. And I thought, how am I going to address it? I'll just do it from the pulpit. That is not what's happening. If you're thinking that that I might be aware of something that you've been involved in and I'm dealing with it in this way, that is not the case. I'm dealing with loving God and loving others, which is the second part of our vision. But I'm getting to where I'm going with this. But sort it out. I know for some of you it sounds really painful, and I'm not going to lie, it is. It can be really painful doing this. However, it is far less painful than having broken relationships. I think that is far more painful. When the relationship is mended, it is the best thing. When we didn't deserve it, Jesus reconciled himself to us. He sacrificed himself so that our relationship with God could be restored. And in turn, as Christians, out of a thankful heart, we need to be doing the same. We need to do everything that we can to reconcile ourselves with those that we've had a falling out with. Remember what it says. If someone says, I love God, but hates a Christian brother or sister, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people we can see, how can we possibly love God who we can't see? Our vision is know, love, and serve God and others. It's bringing life to the Port community and beyond. And today I've been looking at this idea of love, loving God and loving others. But I put it to you, how can we love others? How can we love the people in our community, the broken, the difficult, those that want to mock you, those that your enemies? How can you love others if we can't even love our own family at church? It's got to start here. If our relationships here are broken and we're not able to reconcile with our own brothers and sisters in Christ, what hope have we got when we try to reconcile and sort out issues with people outside of church where they don't have to try and reconcile with you? And in fact, a lot of them won't try to reconcile with you. Certainly not using the process that we use. And so I really want to encourage you, as we're about to get back to church. It's been a couple of years of really brokenness, I think, in the church, just from a unity point of view, from the point of view that we haven't been able to meet together all the time. And there's been people a bit worried to come back because of potential illness, and all of this stuff has led to people with interesting philosophies about COVID and everything, and that has brought tension between people. But you know what? The church needs to be a place where we are unified. We need to be a church that remembers our main calling, and that is to love God and to love other people. Forget the other stuff. We need to move on from that. Let's get back to our core business. We love each other, warts and all, despite the fact that I'm going to annoy you, and I've probably annoyed some of you today. And if so, I have no issue with you. Please come later and say, Josh, you really did annoy me today. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I'd be happy to apologise. If that's what I need to do, I'm happy to do it. And I hope that that's the heart that we all have here, that let's be a church family that is quick to forgive. Quick to forgive. We're not going to be perfect. I'm not going to ask you, make sure you're behaving well with other people. You won't behave well with other people. I won't behave well. All of us are going to do things that we go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have done that. That's okay. It's not great, but it's okay because we're not perfect. But let's remember, let's just, whatever we do, let's sort it out. I'm going to hand over to the music team now. I really think it's one of those times where this morning, it's you know in your own heart what's going on. And I would encourage you as we leave here today after we've done a couple of worship songs and we've had some fellowship, which is going to be great. Can I encourage you, and for those people watching at home, if you know that you have a situation with a family member or a friend or another person at church and they're Christians, go to your Christian brother or go to your Christian sister and just sort it out. God bless.